Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Just Add Champagne. I am your host, Elise Cordell, and I'm so excited for this segment because we are going to be talking about food that is great for dining al fresco because the weather is good, the sun is shining, and I think we're all a little bit stir crazy and ready to really get out of our homes and explore. So as always, if you have questions, please feel free to either use the Q&A function or you can put them into the chat. This will be recorded and I will put it onto YouTube afterwards. And when you are using the chat, make sure that you click the button that says to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see what it is that you're saying so that we can answer your questions. But I would also love to see where everyone is dialing in from. So please feel free to put that in the chat so that we can say hello to you. My guest for today, I am so excited to welcome because it has been almost a decade since we have seen each other, but it's been even longer than that since we met. This is Chef Warren Caterson, and he and I actually met because of the wine industry. I was very young, working at ABC Fine Wine and Spirits in St. Augustine, Florida. We were doing an in-store tasting, and he was part of our talent. So he came in and did a couple of demos for us. I think you actually made shrimp during that particular one. It was like a gambas al ajillo kind of thing, and it was so delicious. And we've kind of been connected ever since. And so I'm so happy to be able to welcome you today, all the way from Sarasota, Florida. So if you could, everyone welcome Chef Warren, and why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for all that applause. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, please sit down. Sit down. You're embarrassing me. Stop it. Stop it. Yeah, I'm Chef Warren. I'm author of Table for Two, the cookbook for couples, one of the top 100 cookbooks in America, with over 235 recipes, all scaled down for two people, so there's a minimum of leftovers. You can get all the ingredients in a regular supermarket, you know, like Publix, Winn-Dixie, Walmart. Nothing exotic or cute, because if you're like me, I don't like to open a cookbook with a recipe that calls for something like, I don't know, tablespoon of freeze-dried juniper berries. And you're like,
You even find that.
yeah, drive all over town looking for it. You finally find it in some obscure store downtown. You get it home, you open it up, you scoop out what you need, pop it in the pan. What do you do with the rest of the bag? Yeah, you put a twist tie around it, you put it up in the cupboard, you use it again, which is never, okay? So everything's real ingredients, and it's all can be made quickly, and that's some of the things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about cooking with wine, and some of the recipes I'm going to share with you today can be made in under half an hour. A couple of them can be made in like 10 or 15 minutes.
This is music to my ears because, I mean, trying to figure out what you're going to cook every day is certainly a task. So the fact that you can do it quickly, you know, like when I work from home, so after my work day, my husband comes home as well, like we're both just totally tired and no one necessarily wants to like take the responsibility of cooking. So if something can be done in 15 to 30 minutes, that is probably the best thing in order to make sure that we make it past the 10 years of marriage that we've already hit. So thank you so much for developing these recipes. It's amazing.
What we're going to do today, I'm not going to teach your guests how to make a dish. I'm not going to share with them a recipe. The main thing I want to, when people leave this video program, I want them to be able to make a dish with a sauce that they can make with chicken, beef, pork, shrimp, fish. So in other words, it's just not a thing, it's a many thing, okay? And you can get mostly, you probably have most of the ingredients. If not, you can go get them. It's a French dish. It's very rich. So this is not something you want to eat every night, but if you want a special date night, if you have company coming over, this is the dish to make. Okay, so like I said, we're going to make with chicken tonight, but you can make with beef, pork, fish, or shrimp. It'll knock your socks off.
So a sauce of all trades, you know, almost like a duct tape sauce, makes everything better.
Champagne cream sauce, because we're talking about champagne tonight. Okay, so yeah, and I poured my glass. Okay, so to get started, before you can get started, you have to pour your glass of champagne.
I think that's important. So I hope that everyone has their champagne open. I definitely opened my first bottle, and we're going to get into the tasting, but one of the first things I want to do is I want to launch our first poll of the evening to see how all of you, who's been doing the cooking in your house. And I mean, even just historically in general, not just over the pandemic, like growing up in my house, my mom handled most of the cooking that was done inside, and then my dad did most of the grilling. So, and then the way that my husband and I kind of, he handles a lot of the stuff on the stove while I do a lot of the prep work and maybe make a lot of the side dishes. So I think every couple kind of has their way of doing it, or if you're living alone, obviously it's all on you. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of fun, I think, as an exercise to be able to kind of make food for each other. I was on a webinar earlier today where they were talking about how food is love. And I definitely feel that way, especially after growing up with family meals. We all sat together every night, for dinner after school before we had to do our homework and go to bed promptly at 8:30. And so I'm curious where everyone is today. So it looks like we're getting quite a few answers in, which is awesome. And let's see here. I'm going to share these results for everybody so you can see. It looks like a lot of people, they're like, I'm the one who's doing it, or their partner is doing it. I'm glad to see no one chose Uber Eats, which I'm laughing at because I wanted to get some delivery services in there. And for those of you who are buying your meals pre-prepared at the grocery store, there is no shame in that whatsoever. Now, we kind of talked a little bit about why you came up with Table for Two, and it has to do a lot with like being able to find ingredients, about time, about management, because we were really looking at a lot of recipes online this year because we were home a lot. Normally I was on the road, so Matt was kind of cooking for himself, and it was usually like tacos or something easy like chicken breast over salad or something like that. But we were trying to spice it up, within our own homes. And a lot of these recipes are geared towards large dinner parties. You're looking sometimes from 6 to 8 people, and that's a lot of food. So I'm glad that you were able to come up with the idea of Table for Two so that people really could, figure out how to make great, fresh, delicious food, but in a normal amount, of volume so that you don't have to do all that mental math to divide all of the ingredients. You can make it easy enough to multiply if you had to do so. But the reason why I chose Perrier-Jouet today as one of our pairings is because historically we have been very involved in the gastronomic community and very supportive of chefs. And we actually have our own chef at Maison de l'Epoque in Epernay. His name is Sébastien Morion. And he will be doing a very cool thing called Belle Epoque Society, where you can actually dine in the courtyard of our Maison, and he will be making the food. So that is super cool. So if anyone is hopefully, like, fingers crossed, planning their trip to France, that is definitely something to look out for, and call me. Or my Instagram handle is here, so you can actually reach me that way too. But prior to 2020, like, I was doing a lot of these dinner experiences, and the whole portfolio is just super fun to pair with. And so I'm thankful that we actually have this modem that I can use in order to be able to share a lot of these things. So before we do our tasting, I'm very curious about you, because you got to taste these and then use them in the sauces and then figure out what sort of things you thought were going to be great to share with the guests. Who influenced your culinary style?
I've got a couple mentors. None of them were like really hands-on. I started reading cookbooks decades ago. Pierre Franey, guys like that. They're like real cooks, who wrote for like New York Times. Those guys just really helped me cook. Okay, Jacques Pepin, another mentor for me, reading through all his books. And what I really loved about a lot of these old school cooks is they were very, very practical. Mm-hmm. They cheated. Okay, they didn't make everything from scratch. I learned so many things from these guys who all worked in professional kitchens, high-end kitchens, and they said, here's the way we do things. Here's the way you can do things at home. So that's what I latched on to. Okay, even the frugal gourmet, back then, the galloping gourmet, guys like that, the old school people, before cooking became, a fad or people became rock stars.
Yeah, Food Network phenomenon.
Well, these guys wrote cookbooks. Here's how you can make a great meal at home with these ingredients. Oh, you don't have potatoes to dice up? Do this. Get your hash browns, your diced hash browns out of the freezer and use that. I got that from Jacques Pepin. That's what he did. So I'm like, these 5-star chefs are working things to make them at home. That's who inspired me. So what I want to communicate, to the readers of my cookbooks, here are great meals that you can make at home in under an hour, most under half an hour, with ingredients you probably already have in your kitchen. And we're going to demonstrate some of those here tonight. I mean, the champagne sauce, it's to die for.
I'm excited to make it.
But it's to die for. And so if you have a special date night with your spouse, your significant other, you've got company coming over, and this is the way you make just a basic cheap cut of steak, a chicken breast or a chicken thigh shine.
Definitely.
So those are the guys inspired.
Well, cheers to making practicality delicious and, learning some really great skills tonight that we can definitely use to wow our guests when we actually all get together.
Absolutely. So if your guests have a pen and pencil, here's what you need to write down. Here's the ingredients for my champagne cream sauce, okay?
Okay.
3 tablespoons of butter, or you can use 3 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm going with the butter because that's a French thing. I'm not really eating healthy tonight. We're eating good.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I'm not using butter. I'm going to use olive oil. No, forget about it. Tonight, forget about it. If you have butter, unsalted butter, 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, or 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Doesn't have to be extra virgin, just olive oil. Then you're going to need 2 tablespoons of brandy or cognac. Doesn't be expensive, just it's a French thing, okay? It's not a deal breaker, but it's going to look cool when you use it, okay? So we got 3 tablespoons of butter. We got 2 tablespoons of brandy or cognac. We've got a 1/4 cup of chicken broth. Now that's confusing to some people because they're like, where am I going to get a 1/4 cup of chicken broth? I'm going to go down to the grocery store and I'm going to buy, a quart of chicken broth from Swanson's, or I'm going to buy a can of chicken broth and I'm going to use a 1/4 cup of it. What am I going to do with the rest of that broth? Because you got to use it in the next 2 or 3 days. So unless you're planning on making a bunch of chicken soup, where are you going to come up with a 1/4 cup of chicken broth? Now, for a lot of people, they say, I'm just going to get a bouillon cube and just go ahead and make a couple bouillon cube and use a 1/4 cup of it. I never use bouillon cubes when I'm cooking.
Really? Never?
Never. And here's why. What's the primary ingredient in a bouillon cube?
Salt?
Salt.
Okay. Yay, I win.
The ingredient in a bouillon cube is salt. Okay, so we're going to steer away from that. What I recommend in all my cooking classes and all my recipes is to buy what's known as a soup base. This is a paste. This is what we use pretty much in all commercial kitchens, even high-end kitchens. We don't make our soup stock, our beef stock from scratch. It's just not economical to roast all those beef bones for hours and then simmer them for hours to make a beef broth. We buy what's known as a soup base. Now, in the grocery stores here in America, here's what I recommend. It's called Better Than Bouillon.
Oh, I've seen that. Yes. Okay.
It's soup base, okay? It's a paste. Use 1 teaspoon per cup of water. So we're going to make our 1/4 cup with a soup base. So I only need a 1/4 teaspoon of this with a 1/4 cup of water. This is what we use. Now, of course, when we, in the commercial kitchen, we buy bigger vats of it. This is what you'll find at Walmart, Publix, Walmart, everywhere. The reason why I recommend this, when you look at the ingredient list, like this is a chicken base, the first ingredient is not salt. Guess what the first ingredient is?
Chicken? Excellent.
If I buy beef, it's going to be beef. Ham, ham. Clam, clam. Lobster, lobster. Mushroom, mushroom. It's got salt in it, but it's got a third to a half less than in a bouillon cube.
Okay.
It tastes wonderful. So this is what you get at the grocery store. I recommend this. This baby makes 39 cups. That's almost 9.5 quarts. It cost me $3.99.
Wow.
So it's economical.
Definitely.
But after I open it, this is good for 18 months. So I
Really?
use
Even open?
and over and over again. Now, just so you know, anything I recommend, I don't make a dime off this. Okay, I recommend it because I bought it, I tested it, I checked with other people like Cooks Illustrated, Consumer Reports. I get a consensus, so I'm recommending this brand because it's what you buy in the grocery stores because it's the best you can get for the money. So now you can make a 1/4 cup of chicken broth without having to open up a big, plastic carton. So 1/4 cup of chicken broth. So we got that. 1 cup of champagne. If you don't have champagne, don't fret. You can use white wine. I recommend a Sauvignon Blanc. Not too oaky, not too sweet. It doesn't have to be expensive.
Right.
That's drinkable. Not cooking wine.
Yeah. Please don't ever buy cooking wine. It's terrible.
Never use cooking wine in your kitchen. Why? It's loaded with salt. Okay, they have to put salt in it to make it a food product, not an alcohol product. That's why grocery stores, like up north where I do shows, they can't sell wine or beer, but they can sell cooking wine, even though there's much alcohol per volume in that as there's in regular glass of wine. So stay away from that. If you have it, pour it down the drain. Go down to the grocery store, liquor store, buy an inexpensive, drinkable Sauvignon Blanc. But like I said, we're doing champagne, so I'm using champagne tonight. So we got 3 tablespoons of butter or olive oil. We got 2 tablespoons of cognac, a quarter cup of chicken broth, 1 cup of champagne or Sauvignon Blanc, 1.5 teaspoons of tomato paste. Now, this is another thing people wrestle with because they're like, I got to open one of these cans to get like a tablespoon or teaspoon out of it. You can do that. What I recommend is buying tomato paste in a tube like this.
Oh, nice.
Okay. This way I can squeeze out a tablespoon, a teaspoon. I put the cap on it, put it back in my refrigerator. It lasts almost forever. Okay.
It's a lot cleaner too than trying to like scoop out of the can and then clean out of the can. Like the whole thing.
You can make that last, but we're talking about expediency here. So
yeah.
Get your tomato paste in a tube. So we've got 1.5 teaspoons tomato paste. And then we've got a 1/2 cup of cream.
Okay.
We use a 1/4 cup and a 1/4 cup. We're to divide it. Okay. So what I did is I took my chicken broth, my champagne, my tomato paste, and a 1/4 cup of cream, and I put it in this cup. Okay, that's what I did. And I've got the other 1/4 cup of cream set aside. So what we're going to do, we're going to heat up our pan. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing.
I'll spotlight you here so everyone can see better.
Okay. And so we've got 2 chicken thighs. You can make this with bone-in chicken breast. I'm using chicken thighs because, to be honest with you, they taste so much better than chicken breast. But you can make this with chicken breast. Now we're going to season these with salt and pepper. Now, a lot of recipes talk about getting salt and pepper and sprinkling on the top. We're not going to do that. Here's one tip I want to share with you. Whenever you're seasoning chicken, turkey, anything like that, You don't want to sprinkle your salt and pepper or your seasoning on top. What you want to do is put your seasoning. So I've got my salt and pepper here in a small bowl. And if it calls for other seasonings, you know, you can put that in a small bowl. Then what I do is I take those seasonings, I lift up the skin like this, work your fingers underneath it.
Oh.
Then I put my seasoning underneath the skin.
That is a next level hack. I would never have thought to do that. We actually made chicken thighs last night and we seasoned the top.
You're doing Thanksgiving turkey and, you know, it talks about, you know, seasoning the turkey with all your spices and salt. Work your fingers underneath the skin and put your seasonings underneath the skin. This way the seasonings actually go into the meat and just not on top of the skin. This way, even people who don't want to eat the skin because they're like, you know, trying to watch their fat intake, will get a very tasty. So what I did is I put all the seasoning, my salt and pepper underneath, rubbed it underneath, so we're ready to go. Now I'm going to take my 3 tablespoons of butter. Like I said, you can use your olive oil. We're using 3 tablespoons of butter. And I'm heating a pan over medium heat.
Oh, yes.
And we're just going to go ahead and melt the butter. Or heat the olive oil. Won't take long. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my chicken.
And you always do skin side down first to crisp up the skin?
And we're just going to get and brown this, you know, for a couple minutes per side. It could be, depending on how big your chicken is, could be 3, 4, 5 minutes, okay? We're just going to go ahead and brown it. Now, the nice thing about this recipe, let me turn on my fan.
Here we go.
When the builder built this house, they put the fire alarm like
super close. Yeah.
I don't run my fan, even though I'm not even cooking over it. It goes off. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and brown this on both sides. This is for chicken, right? This is going to take the longest to make. For beef, pork, and fish, and shrimp, it's going to take less. So I'm going to share with you, while this is browning, I'm going to share with you how to season your pork, your steak, and your lamb. You want to season it with salt and pepper. Here's what I recommend. You take your steak out. Now, I wouldn't make this with an expensive steak. I would not make this with, you know, ribeye, porterhouse, but maybe a top sirloin that you get for $4.99. And that's the steak you get when you go to Outback and you order a steak. It's going to be a top sirloin. It's not a bad steak, but it's not top of the line. This is a great dish to make with an inexpensive steak like top sirloin. Or you can make with a pork chop, you know, a pork chop that's an inch or so steak, or lamb chops. Here's what I recommend. For the chicken, we put the seasoning underneath the breast, you know, underneath the skin. But for steak, pork, or chicken, here's what I recommend. Season your steak, pork, or chicken at least 45 minutes before you cook it. This recipe or any recipe, whether you're grilling it, whatever, for your steak, season it with salt at least 45 minutes. Here's why. In the first 3 to 5 minutes, that salt on the steak will start to draw the moisture out of that steak or that pork chop or that lamb. Okay, so if you season it, you put it on the grill or put it in the pan, all that moisture has been drawn out and you're going to lose it. However, if you season it 45 minutes beforehand, sure, in the first 3 to 4 minutes, it's going to draw the moisture out, but in the next 30 minutes, reverse osmosis takes place, and that meat will reabsorb that moisture along with the salt. for pork, for lamb, for beef. Salt it with salt and pepper about 45 minutes before you go ahead and make it. It'll taste much better than
Definitely.
the chicken. We put the salt and pepper underneath the skin, and we're just going to cook it and brown it on both sides. That's what we're doing here.
Excellent.
So it's turning nice and brown, getting a nice sear to it, and you want to do that as well with your steak, with your pork, with your lamb, even with your fish and your shrimp. Okay, so that's going to take a lot faster. So now we've got our chicken here getting nicely brown. I made the sauce here already that I told you about with the champagne, with the chicken broth. It's all going to go in here. Got this ready. Ready to go. But the last thing I'm going to do, and this is where you are going to amaze your friend. Okay? As this gets ready to be done, which is going to take a second, we've got our 2 tablespoons of cognac or brandy. I'm going to put it in the microwave for about 15-30 seconds.
Okay.
So it's heating, we're heating up our brandy or cognac because we're going to flambe it, and it's going to look really cool. And if you have friends watching, it's going to be amazing. Right, so it's a French thing.
I've flambéed a few things at home when we make like pasta alla vodka, for example. And sometimes I think I probably do a little bit too much because it's like a lot of flames. One of my wooden spoons actually has a bit of char on the outside. So I'm definitely excited to see how a professional does it.
Okay, so we've got our chicken here. It's nicely browned. I'm going to go ahead and take it off here. I'm going to pour off most of the fat, not all of it, but most of it. I'm going to go ahead and add warm brandy. And then I'm going to hopefully ignite it. Oops, hold on here. Let me add just a little bit more.
And is that also deglazing the pan at the same time?
It is, but the nice thing about it, it's taking away the bite out of the cognac. If you don't want to do this, you can just add, instead of 2 tablespoons of cognac or brandy, you can use just like half a teaspoon. Okay.
I keep waiting for like the whoosh.
It should, but it's done it before.
Now, is it something that can happen where if it was if the pan was super warm, will it have cooked off the alcohol really quickly and therefore it may not have lit as easily?
No, actually, the alcohol really isn't burned off.
So that's a misconception.
Yes. And so if someone in your household is dealing with the disease of alcoholism, cooking with wine might not be a good thing because it doesn't all cook off.
I see.
I'm going to keep this. So we've all heard where, when you cook with wine, the alcohol burns off. That's not the case. And back in 1990, University of Washington, USDA, did extensive tests on alcohol retention in food, and they found that in no case did all the alcohol burned off. Okay, we're having some issues here. I'm not cooking on my stove. I'm cooking on a hot plate here.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. But that's how everyone knows that the show is real and in real time. And have things like this happened when you're on the road at trade shows as well? You just kind of have to keep moving.
I don't do flambe on my shows.
Oh, okay.
I know this can happen.
Just in case.
I do it at home because I got more control.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll try it again. If you're at home on a stove, you heat the cognac, you put it on your stove, and it should ignite.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, it doesn't. So what I do, I just do this. Ooh.
Ooh.
Okay, this isn't going to go. So I'm going to put my chicken back in.
Okay.
And then add my sauce.
All right.
And then we're just going to cook the chicken until it's done to where it reaches about 165 degrees. Which will take about 20 or so minutes for chicken. Now, the nice thing about this, when you're cooking steak, do it the same way. Go ahead and brown your steak, add your sauce, and cook it to where it reaches 125 degrees. That's it for steak. For the same thing for lamb. For pork chops, you do the same thing. You brown your pork chops, add your sauce, cook it till it reaches 145 degrees. Okay, that's important. For your fish and your shrimp, it'll be done almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So you brown your shrimp, you brown your fish, put your sauce in, and cook it until just the fish starts to flake and your shrimp is just tender. Right? That's the fastest way to do it. Right? We're doing the most traditional way with the chicken. So we just have to cook it until it's done.
What's the best way to tell with chicken, especially with a thigh? Because I'm guessing you're using a bone-in piece. How do you tell?
Well, the chicken is done is by taking the temperature.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So you want your chicken to be 165 degrees before it's done. That's when it's done. Don't cut into it. Don't look to see if the juices run clear or the meat is white. The only way you'll know it is by using an instant read thermometer, putting it in the thickest part and seeing when it reaches 165 degrees. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. Get a good instant read thermometer, not one of these. These are the thermometers you get for $3 or $4 at Walmart, Target. They're inexpensive, but they are so slow. By the time this dial reaches the desired temperature, your steak, your chicken can be overcooked. So
It's already done. Yeah.
Getting a good instant read thermometer that reads the temperature in like 3 or 4 seconds. So we're going to go ahead and take our temperature here. So we're about good. I'm going to take my chicken out. Like I said, my steak will come out sooner, as well as my pork chop. Fish, even sooner. Shrimp, even sooner than that, just a couple minutes. Then I'm going to add my last quarter cup of cream.
Okay.
Now I'm just going to cook this until it thickens a little bit.
I wish that we had smell-o-vision so I could smell the sauce as you were cooking it. How does it smell over there?
It smells good. We're just talking about like 2 or 3 minutes to thicken. And like I said, this sauce works for everything. The chicken, steak, pork, lamb, shrimp, fish. Once your meat your protein's done, you take it out, cover it, so it stays warm. Then go ahead and cook your sauce down till it thickens. Which won't take long.
Mm-hmm. And that's still over like a medium heat?
Yes.
Okay.
You want it to boil so it thickens.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, I know that this is going to be such a nice pairing, you know, with the champagne, not only because the champagne is in it, but just because of the flavor profiles. You know, a Blanc de Blanc is made of 100% Chardonnay. And normally you were saying you don't want to do a big oaky Chardonnay because they're going to be a little bit too sweet, a little bit too much vanilla, a little bit too much of that baking spice.
That's why I recommend Sauvignon Blanc or champagne. Okay?
Exactly. Because pure champagne has a lot of acidity to it. So that's going to help brighten everything, much like a Sauvignon Blanc would too. Like everything is very much about that kind of like salivary gland, you know, like generating, you know, kind of acid. So that's why it goes so well.
So I'm going to pour some of the sauce on top of our chicken, or beef, or pork, or lamb,
or shrimp.
Or shrimp. I'm going to try and turn this down so you can see it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that, you guys.
Okay, so now, we're not done yet because we eat with our eyes first. So what we want to do is just take some either chopped fresh chopped fresh parsley, Italian parsley.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have it, just regular dried parsley.
Okay.
Hold your hand about 11 inches above so you get a nice even distribution.
Oh, this is restaurant quality.
You get a nice, plus when you do it like this, it looks like guys on TV.
Exactly. Elise Tanner, one of our viewers, is wondering if you deliver because it looks delicious.
You know, you always want to look good in the kitchen.
Yes.
If your meal comes out mediocre, like you couldn't get your flambe to work because you're working on a portable cooktop. You do this, you look good in the kitchen.
That's right. A little bit of garnish.
Tonight, you go, it's kind of okay. Man, you look good in the kitchen. So you just want to look good in the kitchen. So you just want to kind of sprinkle it on there. So now we have a wonderful, I'm going to tell you, this is a wonderful sauce. You can use it on chicken, beef, pork, shrimp, fish. It's absolutely wonderful. So here's our final.
The final dish. Oh, yeah, that looks great.
Anyway, it's tender, it's delicious, it's wine. We're ready to go.
All my favorite things.
My favorite.
Well, while you break that down and get ready for the next segment, you know, I think that, you know, we should definitely talk about a little bit about like what your regular, you know, kind of schedule used to look like, you know, before COVID. And, you know, being an author, you know, that means that you are on the road a lot. It means you're promoting yourself, you're doing demonstrations, you're doing book readings, you're doing signings, and that can be super exhausting. But by the same point, it can also be really rewarding. But, you know, what were you doing? And how many shows were you doing a year, you know, prior to the pandemic?
At least I was doing about 235 shows a year, all the way from Florida to Boston, Detroit, St. Louis. And that was pretty much my regular schedule till COVID hit. And then, of course, that shut everything down. So I spent the last year writing 2 more cookbooks, getting ready for when we open up. I've got a Table for Two vegetarian coming out shortly. And then in the fall, Table for Two weeknights, where every recipe can be made in 30, 20, or 10 minutes. So these will be the 4th and 5th cookbook in my series. More in the offering. Table for Two Cooking with Wine will be coming up. And Table for Two Floridian, which will feature healthy fruit and vegetable-based recipes from Florida and the Caribbean islands. So I've been busy. I wish I was out more in front of people, but you got to deal with what you got to deal with. So
that's true.
It gave me the opportunity to write 2 more books.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to finish 2 books in 1 year, is definitely an accomplishment. And because I know that you had been saying prior, like it normally took you about a year to write 1 book because you were on the road so often. I put a link to your cookbooks in the chat.
Test everything that goes. I cook everything goes in my cookbook. So if I've got 235 recipes, it's because I've cooked 235 recipes and I've tweaked them. So it takes me a year. I do most of my writing over the summer when I don't do a lot of shows, but I cook through everything. So being at home, for the last year allowed me to actually do 2 cookbooks. So hopefully those will be out shortly.
And how do you kind of come up with the inspiration for the recipes? I think, for those of us who, haven't written a cookbook before, there are family favorites that we have that we kind of, pass down. I've got note cards that have certain recipes on them and things like that. But what is kind of your emotional and, an actual application process to figure out how to make a cohesive book?
The first thing is to learn just basics. How to saute onions, how to saute garlic, how to saute peppers, how to make potatoes, how to sear steak, how to make a pork chop. Once you learn those basics, which are some of the things I learned from like my mentors, Pierre Frenier, Jacques Pepin, how to do those basic things, then the world is your oyster. Then you just start messing with it. Not many of my recipes are like completely original. In fact, nobody's recipe is complete because people have been cooking for like centuries. So it's just learning from others, tweaking it, enhancing it. That's what I do. So you learn the basics and then you just take it to another level. The recipe I made tonight was originally just made for bone-in chicken breast. Well, I said, well, can I make this with chicken thighs? Can I make this with steak? Can I make this with pork? Can I make it with lamb? Can I make it with shrimp? Which I did. And it took a lot less time, and it was a great saucy dish to put on shrimp, to serve on top of pasta or rice. I mean, you just take the basics and you run with it. So that's why I want to share with your listeners tonight, just not a recipe, but a sauce that they can use over and over and over again. And you can tweak it. And here's how you can tweak it. When you're sauteing, your chicken breast in that butter or that olive oil, throw in some onions, some sliced onions, saute that. Throw in some mushrooms, saute those with that. Some jarred roasted peppers, throw that in there. It's not going to taste, it's going to taste different, but it's not going to taste bad. So you just take these basic things and you build on them, which is what I'm trying to do with my cookbooks, but in doing it in such a way that you can do it in like half an hour.
Yeah. I think that that's great. I mean, just to be able to take that one step at a time and start with that base and add to it. And I was so glad when you said you were going to do a chicken dish, because for me, chicken is kind of a protein that, especially whenever I went to a restaurant, I didn't really gravitate towards, because in theory, chicken is a very humble protein. But what I realized kind of over the course of the pandemic, that was something that we were eating a lot of. But when you make chicken delicious, and you choose alternative cuts, like you were talking about, it doesn't just have to be chicken breast, it can be chicken thigh. We did airline chicken quite a bit at the restaurant that I worked in. And, there are so many opportunities to be able to dress it up. Even doing a whole chicken. I love to do a whole chicken. We stuff the cavity with like lemons and herbs and sometimes apple slices and things like that. And then just slow roast it in the oven. The skin comes out beautifully crispy. Everything's tender. All of the juices stay intact. And then you just make like a really nice couple of side dishes, and you feel super fancy because you made an entire bird in your house. So I'm a really big fan for that. And anything that has crispy skin, I know that you're saying that some people are watching that part of it, but I can't skip the skin. That's one of my favorite parts because I love texture. And so a recipe like this has really fun texture to it because you've got the creaminess of the sauce. You've got, that kind of bright, acidity from the wine and the cognac and everything that went in the kind of salty and savoriness from the broth. So there's so many good things that are going on in one pan. You only used one pan to do that whole thing. So think about cleanup. Cleanup
Yeah.
is so much easier.
Nuke some veggies, maybe steam some rice, or boil some potatoes, and you've got a great meal on the table in less than half an hour.
And we do have a couple of questions as well. So one of the question was, with the cream that you used, was it heavy cream?
I used heavy cream, but you can use half and half.
Okay.
And people say, well, I want to eat healthier. This is not the meal.
This is not your show.
Time to do that. If that's what you have, half and half is fine. Evaporated milk is fine. Okay, which is absolutely fine. But like I said, I wanted to make it the more traditional French way, so I use the heavy cream. It's not a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Milk is probably going to be a little bit too thin, to make the really creamy sauce we're looking at. And like I said, we're not going to eat this every night, but on a special date night, when company's coming over, and you want to take chicken thighs you bought for $1.32 a pound and make them into an incredible meal in under half an hour, this is it. Now, you want to practice your flambe.
Ahead of time.
Watch, okay? I can do it on my stove, on my little cooktop, not so much. Didn't matter. It's all there,
We'll have to add a post recording of you doing a flambe later, just like
on a really hot stove, but on a cooktop where y'all can watch me. It was a shot, I gave it a shot. Didn't matter. It's in there, so that's all good.
And so the other question we have, you were talking about building the sauce, adding new ingredients. And so the other question was, if you were going to add a type of cheese, is there a certain type of cheese that you would gravitate towards for this based on, meltability or even salt content, essentially, also, because we were kind of talking about seasoning.
Any good melting cheese, it could be, you can use Parmesan, you can use Gruyere, you can use grated Swiss cheese. I wouldn't put it in with the sauce. I would add it, sprinkle it on after it's done, and let it melt a little bit.
Okay, that's
you
a good.
Use like the 6 cheese Italian, those kind of cheese that you get already pre-grated. That's a wonderful way to do it. But I would probably not add it directly to the sauce, because the sauce is good on its own. If you wanted to add cheese, I would put it on the chicken, then put the sauce on top of it. Let the sauce melt the cheese, so you get a little bit added something to it.
Okay, I like that. That's a good tip as well, because I mean, if you put it into the sauce, if the pan's really hot, could you accidentally like scald or like burn the cheese, and then it kind of like ruins the whole effect.
Like the pre-grated stuff, it's got cellulose and it keeps from melting. You just want to add, the sauce is good on its own. If you want to add cheese, I would put it on top of the chicken while it's sitting there covered, so the cheese starts to melt, then pour your sauce on top of it. Or if you want, you could sprinkle some Parmesan cheese, on top before you serve it. But if you really want the cheesy taste, I would put it on the chicken, let it start to melt while it's sitting, while you're finishing the sauce, and put the sauce on top of the cheese.
That's a good idea. Okay, I love that. Well, thank you for that professional tip. We definitely appreciate that. So we went kind of the entree route with champagne, which totally makes sense. You're kind of, the acidity in this is going to help to beautifully kind of cut through the richness of that, especially with some of the flavors that we have here. But then, we are also going to are we also doing a salad today?
Yes. This is one of my favorite salads. And it's so easy. And we're going to use some champagne, actually champagne vinegar, or white wine vinegar, but it's a deal. It's so simple, and there's like this dish, so many ways you can expand it. Okay, so let me go grab it.
Okay. Yeah, Lisa was saying that she's got her menu now for the PGA tournament, that she's got some guests coming to Kiowa next week. So we're making chicken, and we're going to get you a side dish too, Lisa. Just you wait.
Now, this is a wonderful salad that you can make with just a handful of ingredients. What I've got is just some baby spinach.
Mm-hmm.
You can even use spring mix or whatever, but I like the baby spinach because it's very neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the flavor of everything else going in there. A lot of times when you get the spring mix, it's got greens in there that are bitter, that are part, it's okay if that's what you have. But if you're
Mhm.
making this for company or whatever, I recommend baby spinach, okay, which is what I've got here, baby spinach. And then for the dressing, this is so simple. Even a 2-year-old with 20 years experience could figure it out. So with this, I've got 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil.
Mhm.
For store-bought, I recommend Bertolli or California olive branch. Okay, for store-bought, you really can't go wrong with that. It's just not me saying it. Books Illustrated, Consumer Reports. I mean, you can go down to the olive store and pay a ton of money for great extra virgin olive oil. Most of us aren't going to do that. So if you're going down to the supermarket, I recommend Bertolli or California olive branch, 2 affordable extra virgin olive oil. So we use 3 tablespoons of that, 3 tablespoons of champagne vinegar, or what I couldn't get champagne vinegar. Trader Joe's has a great champagne vinegar, but it's way at the other end of town. I love y'all, but I'm driving down there to get that. So I'm using a Colavita Prosecco white wine vinegar. So we got 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of the champagne or white wine vinegar,
Mhm.
half a teaspoon of Dijon mustard,
Yes.
okay, half a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, or you can use fresh garlic, doesn't crush it, but this makes it much easier. Go ahead and use a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and then about a 1/4 teaspoon of Italian seasoning.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got my 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of my champagne or white wine vinegar, my Dijon mustard, garlic, and
Mhm.
and then I just put it in a bowl and I
And
whisk it.
whisk.
Okay, that's it.
In our house, we shake.
If you want to put anything and shake it, but
Yeah.
so it's so little, why dirty a jar when you can just go and whisk this up, okay? So I've got my dressing ready. So I've got my couple handfuls of my baby spinach. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of blue cheese.
Oh, any particular type?
No, just blue cheese. Okay, I just bought whatever's on sale. Okay,
Yep.
I cheat.
It's not cheating.
This is a salad. Okay, it's the salad. Okay,
Right.
spent a lot of money on gourmet dough. Okay, I just went down and bought blue cheese at my grocery store that was crumbled. So I've got a 1/4 cup of blue cheese, a 1/4 cup of walnuts that I kind of pounded, chopped up. Okay, so I've got these in the bowl. So I've got my blue cheese and my walnuts. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and add that to my bowl. And then about a cup of chopped strawberries.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent. That definitely adds the summer vibe.
Oh yeah. So I'm just going to add that. I'm going to toss a little bit. Oh, and since blueberries were on sale, some blueberries.
Why not?
Why not?
Seasonal ingredients.
Whatever. I mean, just no rules. Like I said, you learn the basics, you roll with it. So I've got my spinach, my blue cheese, my crumbled blue cheese, my walnuts, and I'm just going to add my dressing. And then toss it.
Excellent. I love using Dijon in a vinaigrette because it's such a nice emulsifier.
So we're just tossing. Now you want to add your salad oil just before you serve. Everything else you can throw together and put in the fridge. Your vegetables, your spinach, your fruit, cheese.
Hmm.
You want to add this until you're ready to serve it. So you toss it, you put it in a bowl, and you have a wonderful
Fresh salad. Yes.
The other thing I want to share with you, I could serve this in this.
Hmm.
Okay. No one will be impressed. We eat with our eyes first. So what I recommend, maybe getting a shallow.
Oh, yes.
We eat with our eyes first. So just don't get out, the salad bowl you got from grandma. Get a nice shallow white bowl like this. I picked these up at IKEA for like nothing.
Nice.
Okay, and so instead of just having it in a plain white bowl, you've got it in a nice broad bowl.
Oh, that's very impressive. Look how it glistens.
Yeah, it's absolutely delicious. So we're talking about just a handful of ingredients. 3 tablespoons olive oil, 2 tablespoons of wine vinegar or champagne vinegar, half a teaspoon of Dijon mustard, teaspoon of white sugar. You want to put some white sugar in there to add some sweetness to it. Quarter teaspoon of garlic powder and a quarter teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And you've got a wonderful salad that you can throw together. Just make sure you don't add the dressing until just before you serve it, so then like sog everything.
So you don't wilt the greens.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I am getting really hungry.
And again, I use strawberries. Feel free to throw in some pineapples, some blueberries, cantaloupe, whatever you have, throw it in there. I should say you learn the basics, then you just roll with it.
I think that's perfect. So we've made 2 dishes super easily already. We've talked about your cookbooks. We've kind of talked about the wine a little bit. I mean, this wine is going to go so well with that salad as well, because, when you think about kind of like the fresh fruit that you get on the nose of this, which is like lots of citrus, like lemon juice, lemon zest, things like apples and pears, all of those things are going, because what goes really well with blue cheese? Pears. Like that's all going to be such a nice pairing. So you could really have this champagne at the start of your meal, throughout the entree course of your meal. But then we shouldn't forget that life deserves a grand finale. That's what desserts are for me. Like whenever I do any sort of wine dinner, when I'm on the road, I do ask them to try to do something sweet, even if we're not pairing it, even though I can. I just like to be able to like really put that finishing touch on an experience. So I know that you were going to do a dessert today as well. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? And then we'll also talk about what we would pair with it.
Okay, the dessert is the last part of the meal. It's what folks are going to remember. Your salad could be great, your appetizers could be great, your entree could be great, but if you fail in dessert, that's kind of what people will remember. So I don't spend a lot of time on my desserts. I'm not a baker, okay? I'm a cook, I'm not a baker. 2 different things. The people I know who bake, that's like a science. Cooking, baking, it is precise. You can't. We talk about, oh, you want to throw in some onions, you want to throw in some, baking, you can't do that. Okay, I'm not a good baker, but I like good desserts and I like healthy desserts. So I'm going to show you a wine-based champagne dessert that you can knock out in no time that will really impress your guests, particularly if you serve it as part of this. So you've got the salad with the strawberries and blueberries. You've got this chicken or your steak or your pork chop with this beautiful, champagne sauce with your veggies and potatoes, whatever on the side. Then you bring out your dessert. This is one of my favorite desserts. The reason why, it doesn't take me any time, and every Everybody loves it. It's a win-win. Okay, so essentially, it's very simple. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with about 3/4 of a cup of our champagne or white wine. 3/4 of a cup. Going to put it in a little saucepan with 3 tablespoons of sugar. Going to heat it till it dissolves. Okay.
Just making like a simple syrup almost.
Dissolve. Okay. After it dissolves, we set it aside. Then you can either add 1.5 teaspoons of chopped fresh mint, or you can use 1/2 teaspoon of dried mint. It's fine. Either one will work. Okay. If you got the fresh mint, use it. If you don't, use the dried mint. You put that in there. Then you go ahead and dice up a bunch of fruit. Okay, so you can use like cantaloupe, you can use strawberries, blueberries. What I like to do, because I'm a frugal chef and I don't like to spend a lot of time in the kitchen, I just go down to the grocery store and I buy one of those containers of fruit.
Yeah.
Watermelon, muskmelon, honeydew. Okay, I buy that. I cut it up into bite-sized pieces. I put it in a bowl, then pour my wine, sugar, mint sauce over it, and I put it back in the refrigerator or freezer and let it cool. Okay, that might take 2 hours. So this is something you have to plan for, but at least you're not baking and having to measure everything. So that's what I did. So I bought one of those, fruit things at the grocery store, a couple bucks. And then I added some blueberries because I have them, right? Some strawberries, sliced some strawberries because I have them. And so I've had this, I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, yeah, marinating.
Sitting there, okay, just kind of absorbing it. All right. This is going to be our fruit dessert. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this into a bowl. Not this.
Not that one. Because we eat with our eyes first.
Eat with the eyes first. So I never serve fruit or any dessert in a bowl. I don't care if it's ice cream, cake, I'll serve on a plate, but ice cream, this kind of thing, never in a bowl. What I do.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Very nice.
My martini glasses, margarita glasses, wine glasses, okay? And then what I do is I just go ahead and scoop. Scoop my fruit. Into my glasses.
Well, then you get to see all of the beautiful colors. You get to see the mint in there, like.
Pour the sauce on top of it. I don't know if you see this. So this.
Oh, yes. That's nice.
All right, so it's here. Now, if you use fresh mint, grab a leaf.
Garnish. The pièce de résistance.
Put it on the side. Or 2.
Just the aromatics of that alone would be very satisfying.
It smells wonderful.
Well, mint is one of the easiest things to grow in your garden, and just only keep it in one container. Don't let it be in another container because it will run rampant.
I don't know if you can see this. So
yes.
We've got this fruit and wine dessert in a martini glass with a couple sprigs of fresh mint. Your guests will love it.
Absolutely.
And it took you like 5 minutes to make and then chill it. Everybody loves it. But the deal is we eat with our eyes first. So always put something in a nice container.
At my house, we use all of the nice china every day because why not?
Came home and made. So what we're doing here is we open, a bottle of champagne.
Mm-hmm.
We use it for 3 courses.
It's pretty impressive. Look at us.
Our entree, our dessert. And we still have some left over to drink.
Yes, we do. And I'm glad that the dessert that you did, I think that fresh fruit is, that's something to really be celebrated, especially during this season. I mean, you living in Florida, you get access to great fruit all the time. But, when something is in season, like whether it's berries, melons, pineapple, like you were talking about, there's just such a natural, nice sweetness to those, a ripeness about them, much like when we talk about grapes. And when you're making a dessert, you never want the dessert to be sweeter than the wine that you're serving, because that's what is going to make the wine seem bitter in comparison. So by doing fresh fruit and by incorporating the wine itself into the actual dessert, you're kind of mitigating that risk. Now, you use the Blanc de Blanc for this one in particular, but you could also use a rosé. So that's why we were talking about the Mum Napa rosé today as well. You could use a rosé champagne for that, and that would just amplify a lot of those really nice berry flavors in it. Mum Napa Brut Rosé is excellent, not only just for, on its own, pairing with desserts. I did a cocktail segment earlier today. It was called the Raspberry Fizz, which was delicious. Also incorporated mint into it. So there's so many ways to kind of incorporate wine into your meal. And when we were talking earlier today, you said that you're writing a book about cooking with wine. Fantastic. Sometimes we even put it in the food, to quote Julia Child. But you said earlier that you have 4 rules for pairing wine with food, and I would love to know what those are.
Okay, so I do a whole show on cooking with wine. And like I said, one of my future cookbooks, it's already written, but the publisher bumped it back for some of the other ones, is cooking with wine. People are often intimidated cooking with wine, okay? Or even serving it. They're afraid they're going to violate some universal principle, okay? I understand where that's coming from, and I blame that on wine snobs. These are the people who make their living. No, not you.
It's not me.
I know you.
Everyone knows that I'm super fun.
But people who can pick up a glass and taste it and say, I taste a little blackberry, a little oak, maybe a little pine, maybe some asparagus. I mean, okay.
I was like, we were going for Cabernet, but then we were talking about Retsina, and now I'm not really sure where we're going from.
Most of us pick up a glass of wine and say, this tastes good or doesn't taste good. That's the way most of us are, okay? So I think one of the reasons we're intimidated is because we listen to these people that have such a fine taste, they can discover that. Now I'm going to tell you, I know a lot of wine folk. I can probably name 4 that can really identify that stuff. And they are so trained. Their taste buds, their olfactory senses, because it's mostly smell, they can really taste that. Everybody else, they're full of crap. They're just putting stuff out there, okay? So we shouldn't be intimidated either cooking or serving wine. Wine is a food. To me, it's not an alcoholic beverage. It's a way that we enjoy it with meals, in meals. It's a food. We don't have to make wine. Wine makes itself. Once we start crushing the grapes, wine starts being made. To make grape juice, that's an industrial thing. You have to make grape juice. You don't have to make wine. So to me, it's a gift from the creator. Okay, so, and if you're trying to cut back on your salt, adding wine to your dishes is a good way to do that, because wine has a similar effect on our palate that salt does. So if you're looking to cut back on your salt, you have a little bit of leftover wine in the fridge. Instead of adding salt, add a dash of wine to your food. You'll find your taste buds coming along. Okay? So let's not get snobby about it. So here's Chef Warren's rules about cooking with wine or drinking wine with your meals. The first one Drink the wine you like with the food you like. If you like the wine, you like the food, drink that wine with the food. So if you're not a white wine drinker, don't feel like you have to do something different, okay? If you're not a white wine drinker and you're having chicken or fish, you can say, I'm gonna have a glass of Merlot or a glass of Cab with this fish or chicken, because that's what I like to drink with what I like to eat. So drink what you like with what you like to eat. Now, there's been guidelines set down for us through the centuries. Generally, white wine is good for like fish, chicken, some pork dishes, red wine for beef, maybe lamb, some pork dishes, but don't be tied to that. Don't drink something that you don't like just because someone says you have to have red wine with beef and you hate red wine. Go ahead and drink white wine, because the deal is you want to enjoy your meal. Okay, so who cares? And I guarantee you, last time I looked, there are no wine police driving through our neighborhoods, looking through our windows, seeing what kind of wine we're having with each meal. And if you're having white wine with a steak, no one's going to knock on your door and say, you're coming with me, buddy. No one's doing it. So drink what you like with what you like to eat. However, follow some of the guidelines if you're unsure. If you try it, you don't like it, no one cares. Okay. The other thing is, are you showcasing the wine or are you showcasing the food? I never spend a lot of money on wine with the meal, because I'm trying to showcase the meal, not the wine. So I will buy a good wine to serve with the meal, or even an inexpensive good wine to serve with the meal. I don't want to showcase the wine, I want to showcase the meal. Now, if I'm just serving some cheese, or we're just having a glass of wine before dinner or a glass of wine after dinner, I want the wine to shine. That's when I bring out my big guns, okay? I don't spend a lot of time or money on expensive wine with the meal, because I want people to remember the meal, not the wine that they drink, okay? So drink the wine that you like, showcase the food, not the wine. Follow tradition, because there is a tradition, okay? Like I said, usually reds for beef, pork, some pork, maybe lamb. That's fine, try it. If you don't like it, no one cares. Drink what you like. The other thing I encourage people is to pair the wine with the sauce, not necessarily with the protein. So if I'm serving beef with like a white sauce, Bordelaise or something like that, I will serve a white wine with that because it matches the sauce. Same thing with pasta. If I'm serving a red sauce, I'll serve red wine. If I'm serving white sauce, I serve white wine. So I try to match the wine with the sauce, because usually that wine goes into the sauce to really, because like I said, I want the meal to shine, not the wine to shine. So try to match the wine with the sauce. If it's a red sauce, red wine. White sauce, white wine, regardless of what kind of protein you have underneath that sauce. That's what I recommend. The bottom line is, enjoy your food. Maybe you're the only one in the family that likes to eat a drink of white Zinfandel with anything. That's what you really love. Who cares?
Embrace it.
During your meal, never will have the oaky Cab or whatever, enjoy it. If someone calls you on it, all you have to do is lean back a little bit and go, you may be right, but this meal is delicious. So I'm drinking what I like, what I like to eat.
Not the type of self-care.
One's 4 rules. Hopefully, those who struggle over what wine to cook with, what wine to serve, doesn't matter. Drink what you like with what you like to eat. Follow tradition if you need some guidance, because you follow it and don't like it, who cares?
I definitely subscribe to a lot of those rules. So I'm glad that you shared those with everybody today. Well, this has been a wonderful segment. We've talked about your table for two cookbooks. You have two more coming out this year. I did link to them in the chat, but I will also post that in the YouTube video that we post later. We made 3 different dishes. I mean, in an hour. I mean, look at you. It's amazing. It makes it so easy because as the cook, you don't want to be stuck in the kitchen while the rest of your guests are, in the dining room or in the living room. I mean, I'm very lucky. I'm in my kitchen right now. My dining room table is right next to me. So if I get stuck in the kitchen, I'm still a part of the action. That's the beauty of an open floor plan. But it's so nice to be able to see, how one wine can carry you through all of these dishes, how all of these are so easy to prepare, and how each and every one of them kind of incorporated something about the season, whether it was through incorporating the wine into the sauce or even with the ingredients themselves. So I hope that everyone enjoyed this segment so much. I'm also going to put in our social handles, just in case you want to follow Warren to see where he's going to be now that he will be back on the road starting in June. He told me he's heading to the Panhandle. So do you post where it is that you're going to be on your website so that people can?
I've got a mailing list, and I send out a monthly schedule. I don't do a lot on Facebook or Twitter anymore. I used to, but not a whole lot anymore. But yeah, we get that out. So if you go to my website and decide you want to know where I'm going to be and what I'm doing and get recipes and tips, sign up for my newsletter. I don't give those names away to anybody.
That's good.
Thousands and thousands of people on it. But do that, and you'll get everything that you need to hear. Does anybody have any questions?
That was going to be my next thing. So we answered the questions about some of the ingredients. So people had asked what some of the ingredients in the dressing were, and we answered those as well. I know that people are looking for your cookbooks, so that's great. Just as an FYI, for those of you who may not have written a book before, when you purchase the book directly from the author benefits the most. So that's definitely where you want to buy your books from if someone has a website. So if you buy it directly from Warren, and he will actually be able to autograph the book for you when you purchase it. And I was looking online, the first 3 books that you've written can come as a pack as well. So you can order all 3 at the same time versus buying individually.
Discount when you do that. Plus I offer free shipping. So I can compete with Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target and stuff like that. So thank you for the there. I'm glad Barnes & Noble sells my book. That's nice, but I like it when I can go to a show or someone buys from my website, because then I can sign it, personalize it. If it's for a newlywed couple, I can personalize it. Congratulations, John and Barbara. We can do that. It's all about the relationship. So if someone wants to do that, I'm more than glad to do that. And I ship within 24 hours.
Excellent. I mean, that is some amazing service there from start to finish. So we're getting some great feedback here. People are saying that they're looking forward to actually getting to make these things at home. So I think that we did the right thing. I mean, all of these things that you chose were perfect, and the inspiration from the wine that you were able to use, inspiration from the ingredients, and practicality being the #1 theme throughout. All ingredients that you can easily find at your grocery store. You don't have to worry about, going to a specialty grocery or trying to find a weird ingredient on Amazon, because some cook is using it and, now it's trendy. So this has been wonderful for me. It looks like everyone has really enjoyed it as well. And so hopefully we can do another one of these again soon, maybe even in person.
Absolutely wonderful, Elise.
Yes.
I miss you.
Yeah. I know, I miss you too. Cheers to you, Chef. This has been really fun, and I can't wait to come back to Florida to visit.
Sunday.
Cheers, everyone. Make sure that you look out for our next show. It will be in the middle of June. And that one is all about birthier wine, because that is my birth month. So keep an eye out on the Just Add Champagne website, and I will get this video onto YouTube so that you can cheers with everybody else. Enjoy. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bon appetit.